All right, welcome back to the channel. So Jermall Charlo beats Canelo Alvarez pretty easily, and is a much harder fight for David Benavidez. So says, at least that's my impression of it, so says Jose Benavidez Sr., the trainer of David Benavidez. What a shocker. Somebody actually thinks that Canelo will lose to Jermall Charlo. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, love this one, okay? Can't lie, got a great giggle out of reading an article that was on Boxing News 24, and it talked about an interview that was given by Jermall Charlo, given by Jose Benavidez, and some questions that were asked by Aki TV. Shout out to Aki TV. Obviously, it was a very, very good interview. Questions that were asked and answered by Jose Benavidez about Canelo Alvarez, about Jermall Charlo, and about David Benavidez. And the gist of it is this. Jose Benavidez Sr., who, by the way, is also the trainer of Jose Benavidez Jr., right, who challenged for a championship against Terrence Crawford, right? The guy obviously knows his boxing, said that Jermall Charlo pretty much I say it sounded like he says he beats him pretty easily, because they were like, nah, Jermall Charlo beats Canelo Alvarez. And he goes into why Jermall Charlo beats Canelo Alvarez. And he's pretty much saying, like, he beats him, number one, because anybody with a good jab is going to cause problems for Canelo. If he has a good, solid jab, and he's like, Jermall Charlo has a very good, solid jab. He said it can improve. The jab can improve. It's not the greatest jab in the world, but it is a very, very solid jab. He said that anybody with a good, strong jab will cause Canelo Alvarez problems, because what Canelo Alvarez likes to do is he likes to sit and time big winging punches. So if you're in a position where you can continually jab Canelo Alvarez, then he won't be able to be in position really set down on those shots he likes to load up on, right? And his impression of Jermall Charlo is that Jermall Charlo's jab is good enough to do that to Canelo. Now, for me, I would say that the jab to his chest is probably what he's referring to. Someone that has a good, solid jab and the ability to jab Canelo Alvarez to the body on a consistent basis will make Canelo Alvarez take a step back and reset. And as long as you can do that, then you are always going to have the theory is have an advantage over Canelo in the scoring of the rounds. But he also talks about how that the awkwardness of Jermall Charlo, but he mentions the fight with Callum Smith, because he was like, if Callum Smith had the expertise and the skill to be able to use his jab against Canelo Alvarez, then he would have had a lot more success. But he held up behind, holds up, takes 2 steps back, holds up behind behind his high guard, flicks a couple jabs out there that Canelo, evades, and then boom, he's there pot shotting the guy to the elbows, right? Busting his elbows, loading up with these big hooks to the elbows, breaks the elbows down, and eventually his hands come down, he lands him to the head. But absolutely, dude, from the tone of that interview, David Benavidez, father Jose Benavidez, is clear that the challenge for David Benavidez at 168 would not be Canelo. And he's saying the same thing about David Benavidez. He's like, look, the harder fight for David Benavidez between Canelo Alvarez and Jermall Charlo, according to the Benavidez camps, is Jermall Charlo. Because of Jermall Charlo's size, his length, his reach now, obviously they believe that David Benavidez can overcome that. But their impression from David Benavidez versus Canelo is that, look, the guy's too small, right? He's too small. He's only 5'8". We'll keep a jab in his face. We'll keep him active, keep him making sure that he doesn't have the ability just to sit there and wind up and pot shot. Then we'll beat Canelo Alvarez. Now, but he says accordingly that that's the reason why the best fight for both of them right now would be the David Benavidez versus Jermall Charlo fight, because either win or lose, those fighters, it's going to be a good fight for both fighters. And number one, and I do believe that it would be a very tough fight, and I think that it's an evenly matched fight. So Jermall Charlo moving up to fighting, and having an incredibly, back and forth fight with somebody the caliber of David Benavidez at 168, I don't think that would harm his career in loss. I agree with that. And also that it wouldn't harm David Benavidez much because of the status of Jermall Charlo and his history as a champion at 154 and 160. Now, another interesting thing that he talked about was the prospect of Canelo Alvarez's next fights. He was very, very clear that, yeah, dude, it's both Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant. They're like, there's just nothing to those fights. He specifically, with Caleb Plant, he said that Caleb Plant's just not that good, that they're trying to build Caleb Plant. But pretty much what's going to happen with Canelo Alvarez, well, what they said would happen with David Benavidez, he's like, Caleb Plant is going to be good for a couple rounds. I mean, for 5 or 6 rounds, he's going to be, slick, moving, shifting. But after that, we're going to get to him, wear him down, and knock him out. So they pretty much sounded like Caleb Plant, it was just not a challenge at all for David Benavidez. Then it's going to be some flashy stuff, for a few rounds. But after that, then he's gone. Now, I can't say for sure. Like, my opinion on that is, number one, I respect the trainer. And I understand that Jose Benavidez really does understand the sport of boxing. And I don't think that he's the type of guy that's going to be willy-nilly in his assessments. The assessment of Jermall Charlo and the danger of Jermall Charlo and Canelo, I agree with that, dude. Those guys are big guys David Benavidez, I don't know exactly how. Well, he does have a nice jab. He has a very sharp, crisp, short jab. But he also follows it up with combinations so much that I guess maybe I need to go back to that. But I know that he does have a solid jab. Obviously, Jermall Charlo has a solid jab. Floyd Mayweather Jr. definitely kept Canelo Alvarez at bay with a jab. Landy Lara caused, with his motion and a very crisp, sharp jab, caused Canelo Alvarez a lot of problems. Same thing with Austin Trout, right? Where you don't necessarily see that in, Gennady Golovkin caused Canelo Alvarez a lot of problems with his jab. Jabbed him up against the ropes, got into nice exchanges, was able to exchange, and fought close fights with Canelo Alvarez off the jab. So I think his analysis of that situation is very solid. So I have no real reason to doubt his analysis of Caleb Plant. And I do know that even though I definitely think Caleb Plant, I wouldn't underestimate Caleb Plant in that fight. There's a lot of, characteristics of Caleb Plant that are just excellent. I mean, the guy stays in tremendous shape. The dude has tremendous heart. He's definitely very highly skilled. I think he's got a solid chin, so I wouldn't just sweep him aside as quickly. But I do understand their aspect that they bring to it about them trying to build him. Obviously, he's got a very good relationship, or he's newly married to somebody that is an employee for the PBC. He's married. The company is. He and his wife are both employees of the company, and he's somebody that most mainstream America would think would be sellable. So anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think, and with that, I'm out. Peace.